what exactly is Bernie doing? Because what we're talking about this is in Tom Perez, or going all the way back to his bill to lower the price of pharmaceuticals that exposed a bunch of Democrats as being shills for the big pharma, called Cory Booker. Anyway, I'm sorry, I had some truth caught in my throat. Like, making them look bad, and so I feel like people in them to the left, but I'm not seeing that happening. I'm just seeing him making the Democratic liberal rank and file acutely aware of how corrupt how and how basically suicidally recalcitrant the Democratic Party is, blaming the rich or even single payer health care. I guess all I'm seeing here. What do you think he's actually like? What is he accomplishing here?
I have an idea of what I think he's accomplishing. It may be naive of me to think, but just for the past 30 some odd years, Bernie has been hammering his same message for 30 years, and has just been desperately trying to get people to listen. He's been working quietly, making amendments and trying to knock some sense into our elected officials and trying to get his message out to the voters so that they can realize how corrupt and ridiculous our elected officials are. And that's basically what he's been doing for 30 years. I think that's what he's doing now. And I think the only thing that's changed is that he has a national platform. He's the most popular elected official in the country. He's got name recognition. People are actually listening to him. People are booking him on shows. I mean, before he ran for president, I would see him on Ed Schultz, maybe like once a week, twice a week. He had him on a lot. He'd be on Tom Hartman, but he wasn't on prime time. They didn't have him on, like this. Nobody knew who he was. So I think he's just really taking advantage of the fact that he's got the ears of the Democratic Party, and that he knows most of them are behind him. And he's just using that as a way to shift the conversation from just Russia, just Trump is horrible, to actual issues that will make people's lives better. And in doing so, he exposes the corruption of the Democratic Party, and also, gets people more involved and aware of what's going on, to try to, and that's how you pull the party left. He's not going to pull the party left by pissing off the leaders of the party now, but he can pull them left by getting more, just regular people aware and involved. And I think at least that's what he's trying to do.
I think Katie makes a great case for what I'm hoping he's doing. And I think the thing is that Bernie could have been more amiable in that interview that we were talking about at the top of the show. Like, he could have bent more to what Democrats wanted him to say. And in that Shattered book that we referenced earlier, also their talk about a commercial that Bernie cut. And when he cut the commercial, they ended up deciding not to use it, because Bernie was he wouldn't say "I'm with her," and I think the quote was, "It sounds fake," or "It's not genuine, it's not real." Essentially, was the message behind it. He's like, "I'm not saying it doesn't sound right, it doesn't sound real," and so, like, I know a lot of people are concerned that Bernie is bending too much towards Democrats, and I feel that way myself a lot of the time. But at the same time, I think Katie again makes an excellent case for how he's doing what he's been doing for a long time, which is exposing Democrats for essentially what they are. But I'm interested what you guys had to say. Your thoughts there.
So if he's trying to pull the Dems left, he's going to learn a really hard lesson. He's going to learn it really quick. It does not work, because there's no such thing as the left in this country. We have to stop acting like the American idea of left and right is truly left and right. It's all center right. It's just how far to the right of center are we actually going? Do these people fall along the lines at? So part of, if Bernie's really truly trying to change the party from within and do all these other things that are here, a lot of people saying, and I see a few people doing, we're going to run into some serious issues. And the fact of the matter is, the party's run at a lot of the base levels, at a lot of these individual legislative districts in all these different states. The party is completely and totally run, because so many of these people are truthfully to the right side of the economic spectrum. They're to the right in policy-wise, but they're like, well, I don't necessarily hate black people or necessarily hate gay people, so I'm going to try to develop this, tiny bit of social progressivism that I can handle. And a lot of these folks don't want you to be there unless they, what they consider to be centrist. and this is something I've consistently seen online in forums, on Twitter, on Facebook, in arguments between people that are like, well, we're going to push the party left. The party doesn't want to go. And Bernie Sanders can't do anything about that. And to be quite honest, I'm really kind of bothered by the amount of fanaticism that still follows Bernie. I was a Bernie delegate to Philly. I went there and I went through hell to be a part of that Bernie movement. And I still really respect and admire Bernie Sanders as a politician, but I think we've got to drop the facade that the Democratic Party is going to be anything viable within the next 15 to 20 years. It's just not happening. And I would rather spend that time building up a third party. I'd rather go left and click up with the Greens and socialist alternatives than sitting here beating a dead horse that admittedly says they don't want me there.
But I think the difference
I want to
is...
get you in here, Katie, but I just wanted to say quickly, if Bernie might be moving the members of the Democratic Party towards the left rather than the leadership. But
that's exactly what I was going to say. You're focusing on the heads of the party and the actual elected representatives in the party. I think that Bernie is doing what he's done for a long time, which is not try to convince Congress people to be better, because you're right. That's a ridiculous task. That's not going to happen. But what he can do is, our parties and our elected officials are center right. That's absolutely true. But the people aren't. The people are to the left. The people agree with progressive ideas. People agree with nearly all of Bernie Sanders' platform when you actually poll individual people and not the leaders of the party. So I think what he's doing is just taking it directly to the people. That's the platform he's been given. That was the spoils of his labor of shilling for Hillary Clinton during the general election. This is what he gets out of it. He gets a national platform, and he gets to try to convince people that politicians can be better than they are.
Well, so that I agree. I think I agree with all of you, right? And that's such a middling position to take, an ironically central position to take. But here's the thing. I'm sorry, you want to rebut? Okay, you can go first.
Yeah, because here's what I'm saying. And I agree with you that the American people as a whole are to the left economically. That the American people as a whole, once you tell them, hey, this is just something, healthcare, just have it taken care of, everyone's like, yeah, you know what, that makes sense. So I agree with you there. But the issue that we run into is that the party itself is so far beyond disgusting. And I see so many people putting so much effort to it. I've had several friends have breakdowns over the effort they're putting into the party because they see, well, Bernie's trying, Bernie's doing this, Bernie's doing that, Bernie's doing X, Y, and Z, and almost frothing at the mouth as they say so. They're burning themselves out in a Democratic Party that clearly does not want them there, that the rank and file members do not want them there. And they work very, very, very hard to make sure that they don't get to be there. There's been a lot of quote-unquote state takeovers, and I'm glad to see that happening. But the fact of the matter is we won't see actual results from anything Bernie's doing anytime soon. It's just not viable. I love Bernie. I'm glad he's got that national platform. But I think we've got to stop using we're becoming masochistic to the point of war, right? As a progressive unity. But we continue running back to the Democratic Party, which continues to beat us and tell us they don't want us. And that's horrible imagery. I apologize for that. Let me rephrase. The Democrats continue to reinforce this idea that we're not worth their time, we're not worth their money, we're not viable, we're this, we're that, and the other thing, the only thing we're good for is raising donations. The fact of the matter is, if you know you're strong on the coastal cities, you take the money from that and you run in the areas you're not as strong. But the Dems don't want to do that. The Dems like where they're at. Nothing that, even if Bernie has the national audience to talk to folks, unless he's actually going to start advocating for third parties, advocating that you do this, advocating that you do that, instead of everyone running like, well, look at Bernie and the Dems.
So, quickly, I just want to add that I think maybe he's laying the groundwork for precisely that by doing this. Like that interview with him and Tom, I think it lays out a good example of how you end up making it to where the Democratic Party pushed me out. I have to run as an independent. And if you want Medicare for all, you want these social programs, you want these things, you're going to have to follow me outside of the Democratic Party because they're not going to bring it to you. But I know you need to get in there, Brandon. Go ahead.
I don't need to, but I'd like to. Gosh. Anyway, no. But let's be very clear, right? Based on polling, only about 8% Democratic Party does not like Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders with the Democratic Party is more popular than any other politician. Unfortunately, people who are politically active, whether it be on Facebook or social media, or Facebook, Twitter, any social media site, are exposed to the 8%. It just turns out that 8% are the ones with the biggest platforms, right? That 8% are the Democratic establishment politicians. That 8% are the corporate shills who work at every newspaper from WAPO to the Daily Beast to the Daily Kos. To MSNBC, to that's the 8%. So that those voices become magnified. The Democratic rank and file, they like Bernie Sanders, or rather, they like Bernie Sanders' policies. The only members of the Democratic rank and file who don't like Bernie Sanders are the rabid tribalist Democrats. Those are the same ones who are like, but he's not a Democrat. He doesn't have a D by his name. If he doesn't have a D by his name, how can I possibly listen to anything he says because he's not part of my team? Those same people who support Manchin simply because he had a D by his name. Those same people who decry the very notion of there being a purity test. At the same time, they have their own purity test. Anyone who tells you the Democratic Party cast this Big Tent is full of shit. The Democratic Party hasn't cast a Big Tent. They don't not have a purity test. They have very, very specific purity tests that seem to be that they hide. I mean, they try to obscure with the Democratic Party has a very specific purity test that they try to obscure with vapid, shallow, representation-based social progressivism. Insofar that their purity test is, do you or do you not support corporate money in the party? If you do not support corporate money in the party, you cannot be a Democrat. If you are a Bernie-crat, you cannot be a Democrat. If you won't parrot the idea that Russia was responsible for the loss of Hillary Clinton and the DNC to Trump, you're not a Democrat. If you don't repeat these, if you don't do your best to find blame in someone else, whether it be WikiLeaks or James Comey or Russia, for why the Democratic Party lost, you can't be a Democrat. It seems as though a prerequisite for Democratic Party, whether at least positions of leadership, right, is that you are willing to parrot these talking points that provide solve for the bruised egos of the Democratic establishment. That's what you have to do to be a Democrat. We saw Bernie do that when he went on that first town hall, I believe, when he admitted, oh yeah, Russia had something to do with the election, right? Okay, let's get down to the real issues. And that's what you have to do, right? But here's the problem with that: not actively rebuking this notion that was what caused Hillary Clinton to lose. Hell, not actively rebuking Hillary Clinton is exactly why they're in the place that they are at. And even after this, this interview with Chris Hayes and Tom Perez, we saw the neoliberal liberal think pieces come out of the Washington Post. Look how divisive Bernie's being by pointing to the fact that America's a shithole because of billionaires. Look how divisive he is. Look how
the title of that YouTube video on MSNBC is "Bernie Says I'm Not a Democrat." That's the name of that video. So that's what
Bernie Sanders is not a Democrat. Bernie Sanders won't get. Bernie Sanders is not a Democrat. Let me finish this. Bernie Sanders is not a Democrat. Bernie Sanders won't give his donor list, his email list to the Democratic Party. He's not a team player. Bernie Sanders won't support Ossoff just because he's a neoliberal stooge at best and a complete milquetoast bland corporate he's just a corporatist who takes up space. Ossoff has no personality, really. It's ludicrous.
Go ahead.
Sorry,
I was just gonna say, here's the difference though. Those things aren't taking hold. Those pieces in the Washington Post, the smearing of Bernie Sanders in that way isn't taking hold with actual people. Whereas if he had not played the game and tried to get Hillary Clinton elected over Donald Trump, he would have been marginalized, labeled a kook, a spoiler, and it would have stuck like it did with Nader. They would have Naderized Sanders. It hasn't in a large way. He's the most popular elected official in the country. Only 8% of Democrats don't like him. Ask how many Democrats don't like Ralph Nader.